Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Moving Forward podcast. My name is Robbie. I'm your host, and I'm here with Andy Lamrock. Hello, Andy.
How you doing, Rabi? Good to be back week in, week out.
Absolutely, keeping this going. And the good thing about this is that the news keeps going and it keeps getting exciting. So today's topic is about Apple and Google. So Apple is allegedly quietly working on its own search engine to reduce reliance on Google. So, a recent report from the Financial Times rounds up a lot of rumors, leaks, and other info suggesting that Apple is working on its own search engine and that its efforts to do so are increasing. The reporting also suggests that it's likely that Apple is fast tracking a search product due to Google's current legal situation. As of now, the default search engine on Apple iPhones is Google, and allegedly, Google pays Apple up to $12 billion per year for that privilege. If Google can't do that anymore as a result of the lawsuit, an Apple search engine will be necessary, or else Apple could face user experience issues. So, what is Google in trouble for? Well, the US Department of Justice filed a lawsuit against Google, citing the search engine's long running dominance in online search and anti competitive practices in search advertising, focusing on advertising through search, so not Google's entire ad business. The DOJ, along with 11 US states, claimed Google has been unlawfully operating a monopoly in general search and search advertising through a web of exclusionary agreements. So Google pays billions of dollars to other companies to maintain its place as the default search engine on various platforms, including Apple's iPhones. The DOJ also cited Google's requirement to load its own apps, which are not able to be deleted, well, unless you root your phone and so on, onto most Android phones. So these are the main claims that the DOJ have. It seems to me that it makes sense if Apple is paying billions to be in that situation. Sorry, Google is paying billions to be in that situation. But I don't think the main concern of this lawsuit is the fact that Google probably controls 80 to 90% of the market share of the search engine. So do you feel like this is something necessary? Do you feel like we need to make sure there is a lot of competition in this place? Maybe a ban on such payments? Or is this just a free market thing? We should allow them to do what they need to do to be successful.
Well, so first of all, let me start by saying, dog ate my homework.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
really haven't looked at this in detail, but I think what's really intriguing about this particular situation uh, is there an unraveling of the big tech giants when we talk about the market? It's like, does it feel like big oil all over
Mm,
again, where or big finance and those sorts of things? Where if we look back on history, when you have these industrial revolutions, typically someone stands out and steals a lion's share of the marketplace, and
mm.
then there's eventually a backlash to that, and regulatory policy catches up, governance catches up, and they start to decouple or unravel these. And this could be the start of that. Is that would be my observation.
And it's not as if Google is the only one in this space. Amazon is definitely in a position of monopoly, I would say. Apple is a lot of people claim that it's in a position of monopoly with regards to the App Store on iPhones, although that is a bit of a different thing because they produce the hardware there. Um, and a lot of these companies are just there. What what do you think could be a solution? Should we take these companies apart? Should these companies um, uh, be controlled by a government entity? Should they be governed, maybe with certain limitations on the power of the government by the government, or should we just allow them to be there and encourage competition?
Yeah, look, it's a good question. There's lots of debate here, but if you look at the behavior of these really big tech giants, if they see something that's potentially competition,
Hmm.
or big, and if they see it as really good competition, they typically buy it,
Mm, yeah.
and they absorb that technology or IP that's associated with it. I think there's been cases where we might even believe that they bought it just to take it remove the potential uprise of competition as well.
Sure.
So I think there's a lot of things at foot here. The whole search market in itself is also very interesting. And I think social media plays a significant part in that. You know, what does search look like for Facebook, for example, right? We start to search the Facebook ecosystem itself for information now that then links out to the World Wide Web
Yeah.
on topics and things like that, not just staying within the Facebook ecosystem, etc. So I think the search market is a really important one. There's no question about that, and history would say that no one's really been able to take on Google successfully in that.
True.
Even the powerhouse of Microsoft and Bing
Hmm.
couldn't crack that. Okay, it's not that the Microsoft Bing solution is not equal to it. It's a great solution, but haven't been able to capture the hearts and minds of all the consumers, right? And so I think there's a lot more to play out here, Ravi, but it is, we are starting to see the fracture and potential breakdown of this monopoly.
And it's one of those things where it's a double-edged sword because Google and these companies that are stacking billions of dollars are in a position where they can invest in research. They just have so much money. It's not a big problem for them to throw a few $1 million on a VR lab or on an augmented reality lab. And we see that happening all the time. And that's a place where if you put any restrictions on such organizations that could limit their revenue, you are being put in a position where you might be stifling innovation,
Mm-hmm.
or we also see innovation from startups. Um, and maybe these startups are motivated to do that innovation and get into debt at the beginning and not be profitable because they know they would be acquired by these billion-dollar organizations. Um,
Yeah.
so we are being put in a situation where the government knows that they probably need to do something about this. And if they do, there's a lot of things that can go wrong that would probably go wrong. And un complete uncertainty about what could go right.
Yeah, but also to look to another industry that's now, I don't know if it's mass disruption, but significant disruption that was also largely, large conglomerates monopolizing a very significant market, and that's financial services, right?
Hmm.
Financial sector, banking, better way of putting it. Whilst the banks remain heavily regulated, it's, you know, new market niche players have moved in and they're moving in very quickly. We've seen Square, pop up, and PayPal, to name a few, and they're big organisations, right? And then you've got the neo banks like the Starling Bank out of the UK and things like that happening. So, that it, I think what's important here is, as much as the regulators are going after Google in this particular case,
Hmm.
I do have faith that society does have a conscious and a conscious ability to challenge these monopolies, if we call it that. And I don't mean that in necessarily all in a bad way. It's just a way of describing, that they dominate the market.
Hmm.
Um, and so I think sometimes we forget, or or discount to some degree, that your generation that's coming through is highly motivated by meaningful purpose,
Hmm.
highly motivated, more so than ever in history. And that gives me a lot of hope that we are, as a society as a whole, pivoting towards that. And so we won't tolerate these situations where we don't have fair playing fields, or we don't think we're creating playing fields that are beneficial to society in general. Good to see the regulators, obviously looking at it, but
Hmm.
I think there's more influencers out there that could, play just as well to the advantage of changing that landscape.
Yeah, and to end on a good note, it is the fact that a lot of people, and we've seen a lot of movements, such as the movement behind DuckDuckGo as a privacy search engine, and the popularity that it's gaining, though it's not really in a position to compete with Google, but at least you have an alternative to go to if you want to. Um, Despite, at the same time, we know that you are going to be using Google one way or another, um, because Google is enabling the internet to be what it is today. And it's not just a revenue making machine, but it's also a machine that's smoothing the process of working on the internet and making it easier by providing heaps of free services such as Google Meet, which you and I are using right now, completely free of charge. Uh, Maybe they're selling our data, but I think um, we're in a position where we can make the decision on that.
Yeah, look, and a quick couple of points. My daughter's school encourages them to use some type of community search engine browser. I can't remember what it is, but by using that, somehow credits go towards planting of trees or something
That's
like
awesome.
that, right? So I think there's lots of initiatives around that. But also, in terms of wrapping that up, we can never forget that, the likes of Google are at the heart and soul of the internet. Okay. And a lot of why the internet's successful and so powerful and so helpful is because of the work that they've done, right? And they continue to do. So we've got to be careful what we're tearing down here, if at
Definitely.
all, right?
Yeah,
So I think there's it's a great topic. There's lots of sides to this argument, and one that I hope our listeners, can uh, go out and debate a little bit further. It's a good one.
absolutely. And a good topic to and a good ending to episode 25 of the Moving Forward podcast. This was your daily dose of smiles, which are coming behind from faces that you can't see because this is audio. Thank you everyone for listening. Thanks Andy for being with me.
Thanks, Robbie. Good session. Take care, everyone.